It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in late May, the kind of day where the sun seemed to press down on Maple Grove, a tidy suburban neighborhood in suburban Ohio. I was in my backyard, tending to my vegetable garden, a labor of love I'd nurtured for 3 years. The heirloom tomatoes were just starting to ripen, their vibrant reds and yellows a quiet rebellion against the uniformity of the neighborhood's manicured lawns. I was lost in the rhythm of watering when a loud crash shattered the peace, followed by a piercing scream. I set down my watering can, already suspecting the source of the commotion. Sure enough, beyond my 6-foot privacy fence, I found Margaret Hensley, the Maple Grove Homeowners Association president, sprawled on the ground next to a toppled ladder. Her floral dress was hiked up, revealing scraped knees, and her face was a mix of pain and fury. "James Carver!" she shrieked, spotting me. She struggled to her feet, one hand clutching the ladder, the other pointing an accusatory finger. "I know you're hiding something illegal in that yard. Why else would you need such a tall fence? It's against HOA rules." I kept my cool, though her words stung. "Margaret, you're trespassing. My garden's just vegetables, and the fence is exactly the height allowed in the bylaws. I've checked. Do you need help? Or can you manage?" My tone was even, but I couldn't hide a slight smirk as she brushed dirt off her dress, muttering something about control and losing everything. She limped away, glaring over her shoulder, promising an HOA notice. I watched her go, knowing this was just the beginning. Back inside, I sat at my desk and pulled up the neighborhood security system on my computer. Few in Maple Grove knew I designed the entire network of IoT sensors and cameras, a side project from my career in smart home technology. I prefer to keep a low profile, avoiding HOA meetings and neighborhood potlucks. Privacy was my sanctuary, both professionally and personally. I rewound the camera feed, and there was Margaret, clear as day, setting up her ladder to peer into my yard. I saved the footage, sensing it would be useful. Curious, I dug deeper into the system and found something unsettling. Margaret had been spying on other neighbors, too. In the past week, she'd peeked into 3 other yards, clipboard in hand, jotting down supposed violations. That evening, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, a knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Helen Baxter, my 60-year-old neighbor from across the street, holding a plate of oatmeal cookies. "I saw Margaret stunt today," she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "She's been a tyrant since she took over the HOA 3 years ago. Did you know her husband left her because of her need to control everything? Her mother was the same, always watching, always judging." Helen settled at my kitchen island, sipping iced tea. "Between you and me, James, someone needs to stop her. She's driving everyone nuts with her rules. Last week, she fined Sarah Miller for her hedges being 2 inches too tall. Sarah's a single mom with 2 jobs. She doesn't have time to measure shrubs." I nodded, surprised to hear about Sarah, a quiet neighbor down the street. "I've been avoiding trouble," I admitted, "but Margaret seems hell-bent on making me her next target." Helen's eyes narrowed. "Avoiding conflict just emboldens bullies like her. She preys on people who won't fight back. It's all about proving herself to her mother, even now." As Helen left, I noticed a small device on a lamppost across from my house. It hadn't been there yesterday, and its angle gave it a clear view of my front door. A fake sensor, no doubt placed by Margaret to intimidate me. That night, I analyzed the neighborhood's security network. The sensor was a dummy, unconnected but menacing. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile forming. "You want to play, Margaret? I built this system. Let's see who wins." The next morning, a bright yellow HOA violation notice arrived, accusing me of excessive privacy measures and demanding a backyard inspection within 48 hours. Margaret's signature sprawled across the bottom in aggressive cursive. I folded it carefully, resisting the urge to crumple it. Documentation would be key if this escalated, and I knew it would. That afternoon, my security system pinged with movement near my fence. The camera showed a man in a cheap suit and hard hat, Tom Bradley, Margaret's friend who ran a failing landscaping business. He was poking around my fence, taking notes. When he tried to unlatch my gate, I remotely triggered the sprinklers. Water sprayed, sending him scrambling, his clipboard held futilely over his head as his shoes sank into mud. That evening, I hacked into the fake sensor across from my house. As suspected, it hid a recording device capturing audio from an alarming distance. Margaret had been eavesdropping on conversations outside my home, a clear violation of privacy laws. Digging deeper, I found similar devices across Maple Grove, recording residents' private moments. She was collecting leverage to enforce her rules. The next morning, I spotted Margaret watching my house from her car, binoculars poorly hidden behind a newspaper. Instead of confronting her, I sent an anonymous email. Stop recording your neighbors. It's illegal, and someone knows. 20 minutes later, my doorbell camera caught her frantically checking the sensor, panic in her jerky movements. Later, I ran into Mike Turner, the neighborhood maintenance worker, fixing a sprinkler in the community park. Heard Margaret's after you, he said, shaking his head. She's got me working double shifts for no extra pay, threatening to report me if I don't comply. Last week, she made me repaint her porch for free, claiming it's community property. As I walked home, I saw Sarah Miller measuring her hedges, worry etched on her face. James, right? She said. Margaret fined me for my hedges being 2 inches too tall. I've got 72 hours to fix it or pay $100. I'm a single mom. I can't afford this. That night, through my window, I glimpsed Margaret in her home office, staring at a framed photo of an older woman, likely her mother. Her posture was rigid, her fist clenched, as if arguing with the image. This wasn't just about HOA rules for her. It was deeply personal. The next morning, flyers appeared at my door, warning residents about suspicious activity at my address. No specifics, just vague insinuations to turn neighbors against me. I crumpled one in my fist, frustration boiling over. But after a few deep breaths, I calmed down. Margaret was escalating because she felt threatened. I turned to my computer, ready to fight back. Little did I know, her next move would plunge Maple Grove into chaos. The morning after the flyers, my phone buzzed relentlessly with texts and missed calls. Neighbors I barely knew were reaching out, some concerned, others suspicious. Overnight, Margaret had upped the ante, distributing a new batch of flyers across Maple Grove. These were bolder, accusing me of running an unsuspected animal breeding operation at my address, 42 Oak Lane. They claimed strange noises and odors had been reported, painting me as a shady figure operating undercover of my tall fence. The absurdity would have been laughable if it weren't so damaging. I didn't even own a goldfish, let alone a breeding kennel. Stepping outside, I felt the weight of neighbors' stares. Across the street, a couple whispered, their eyes darting to me before looking away when I waved. The isolation hit hard, a stark contrast to the quiet life I'd sought in Maple Grove. Only Helen Baxter, sipping coffee on her porch, offered a sympathetic smile, signaling she wasn't buying Margaret's lies. Back inside, I paced my living room, doubt creeping in. I'd moved here for peace, not a neighborhood war. For a fleeting moment, I considered selling my house and leaving. But running would only embolden Margaret to target someone else, maybe Sarah or another neighbor less equipped to fight back. With renewed resolve, I sat at my desk and cataloged my evidence. The flyers, the fake censor, the illegal audio recordings, and the baseless violation notices. Reviewing my security footage, I found a chilling clip of Margaret threatening an elderly resident, Mr. Thompson, with daily fines unless he removed a small American flag from his porch for being non-regulation size. I added it to my growing file, but it still felt insufficient to dismantle her reign. That afternoon, a hesitant knock at my door revealed Sarah Miller, clutching a new violation notice. Margaret fined me $300 for my hedges, she said, her hands trembling. She claims I was defiant for trimming them myself instead of hiring her landscaper. When I argued, she threatened to put a lien on my house. I examined the notice, noting it lacked the required co-signatures from other HOA board members. This isn't enforceable, I told her. She's banking on you not knowing the bylaws. Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly, but worry lingered. Helen said you're gathering dirt on Margaret. Is it true? After a moment's hesitation, I invited her in and showed her the evidence. The recording devices, the video of Margaret bullying Mr. Thompson, the falsified notices. Sarah's expression shifted from doubt to shock, then anger. She told everyone you're running a dangerous business, she said. I was scared for my son living near you. I'm so sorry I believed her. That evening, a formal HOA notice arrived, announcing a special meeting in 2 days to discuss my ongoing violations and community safety concerns. Margaret was listed as the primary complainant, backed by 3 board members, her cronies who benefited from her selective rule enforcement. As I read, my security system pinged with movement in my side yard. The camera showed Mike Turner creeping along my fence, but before I could sound the alarm, he looked into the camera and held up a USB drive, gesturing urgently. I met him at the gate, where he whispered, "Margaret's watching your house. I can't be seen helping you." He handed me the drive. It's footage from the community center. She doesn't know I have access to the backup server. You'll want to see this. Back inside, I watched in disbelief as the footage revealed Margaret lying to the HOA board about me. She claimed multiple residents had reported noises and odors, that animal control had been called twice, and that I'd threatened her. All false. The footage also showed her accessing HOA financial records late at night, though the camera didn't capture her actions. As night fell, I stared out at the quiet street, the neighborhood I'd chosen for tranquility, now a battleground. I need something bigger, I muttered, unaware that Margaret was about to hand me the key to her downfall. The morning of the HOA meeting dawned eerily still, as if Maple Grove was bracing for a storm. I'd spent the night preparing my defense, organizing evidence into a clear presentation. A security alert interrupted my rehearsal. Sensors detected movement at my back fence. The camera feed showed Margaret, tools in hand, positioning a ladder against my fence. She carried garden shears and a small camera, her audacity staggering. Hours before accusing me publicly, she was trespassing again, likely to plant or gather evidence. I recorded everything as she climbed with surprising agility, aiming her camera at my garden. Then, the ladder wobbled on uneven ground. Margaret screamed as it toppled, landing awkwardly with the ladder pinning her. She clutched her leg, face contorted in pain. Despite our feud, I felt a pang of concern. No one should be hurt on my property. Before I could act, she hobbled away, fury in her eyes. 3 hours later, as I prepared for the meeting, a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. 2 officers approached. "Mr. Carver, we're responding to an assault complaint from Margaret Hensley. She claims you booby-trapped your property, causing her to fall and break her leg." Anger surged, but I stayed calm. "Officers, I have footage of what happened. She was trespassing and fell due to her own negligence." They watched the video in silence. Margaret setting up the ladder, climbing, and falling. She was recording my yard without permission. I explained, showing the fake sensors, flyers, and notices. The older officer's demeanor softened. "We'll need this footage for our report. You might consider filing a complaint for harassment and trespassing." After they left, I slumped in my chair, reeling from Margaret's audacity. She tried to have me charged with assault. "What's wrong with her?" I shouted, slamming my desk. But clarity returned. Her false police report was a critical mistake, turning this into a legal matter where my evidence held weight. I called the hospital to check on Margaret, partly out of duty, partly to cover myself. The nurse confirmed a fractured fibula. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Meeting postponed due to Maggie's accident. She's saying you rigged the ladder. Board's talking emergency measures. Watch your back." The next day, a certified letter arrived from Margaret's attorney, suing me for $50,000 for personal injury, emotional distress, and property damage. I forwarded it to my attorney, Laura Peterson, who replied, "Clear case of trespassing with video evidence. I'll handle it." That evening, I noticed oddities in the security footage. Clips from Margaret's fall had been deleted from the system. Someone with admin access was tampering with evidence. Fortunately, I'd built multiple backups. The secondary server held the missing footage, showing Margaret speaking to someone in a black sedan before heading to my house. I couldn't identify the driver, but her actions were clearly premeditated. The next morning, I woke to a crowd in my front yard, whispering and glancing at my house. At the center, in a wheelchair with her leg in a cast, was Margaret playing the victim. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, rallying support. Only Helen and Sarah stood apart, unconvinced. I stepped onto my porch, ready to face the crowd, unaware that Margaret's next move would drag us into a courtroom showdown that would reshape Maple Grove. 2 weeks later, I sat in the Franklin County Courthouse, the hum of anticipation filling the air as the preliminary hearing for Hensley v. Carver loomed. My attorney, Laura Peterson, reviewed our evidence beside me, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm brewing across the aisle. Margaret Hensley sat there, her legs still in a cast, now decorated with signatures from sympathetic neighbors. She'd added a neck brace, absent during her front yard performance, and winced theatrically whenever eyes turned her way. Her attorney, a slick man named Richard Vance in a poorly fitted suit, whispered in her ear, no doubt coaching her for the show ahead. Margaret hadn't just pressed forward with her lawsuit. She'd launched a social media campaign against me. A Maple Grove Neighborhood Watch page, created under her name, posted vague warnings about the dangerous resident at 42 Oak Lane. Though she never named me, the details, tall fence, reclusive habits, made it obvious. Some neighbors bought into her narrative, crossing the street to avoid my house. Others, like Helen and Sarah, began questioning her story, whispering doubts at mailboxes and over backyard fences. The division in Maple Grove was palpable, and I felt the weight of being at its center. As the hearing began, Vance presented their case with flair, painting me as a hostile loner who'd rigged my property to harm Margaret while she performed her official HOA duties. He claimed she'd been inspecting from the public sidewalk when she fell due to a deliberately destabilized patch of ground. Margaret dabbed her eyes, her shoulders trembling in a rehearsed display of victimhood. When our turn came, Laura stood, her voice steady as she walked the judge through the timeline of harassment. She played the security footage of both latter incidents, the courtroom falling silent as Margaret was shown trespassing, climbing, and falling when her ladder slipped on uneven ground. Your Honor, Laura concluded, this lawsuit is an attempt to weaponize the legal system in a campaign of harassment. MS. Hensley was trespassing, and Mr. Carver's evidence contradicts every claim. Before Margaret could respond to the judge's questions, Vance interjected, Your Honor, we believe the video has been altered. Mr. Carver is an IT professional capable of manipulating digital evidence. He produced a flash drive. We have footage from a witness showing MS. Hensley on the sidewalk when the incident occurred. My pulse quickened as the judge ordered the bailiff to play the video. It showed Margaret on the sidewalk, then suddenly falling, with a timestamp matching the incident. But the shadows were wrong, and the cuts were obvious. Laura requested a forensic examination, pointing out inconsistent shadow angles and visible editing markers in the metadata. The judge fixed Margaret with a stern look. MS. Hensley, ensure your testimony is accurate. Falsified evidence carries serious consequences. As we left the courtroom, Margaret hobbled past on crutches, hissing, This isn't over, James. I've lived here 15 years. These people trust me, not some tech geek hiding behind a fence. I raised an eyebrow. You're right about one thing, Margaret. This isn't over. That evening, Helen, Sarah, and Mike gathered in my living room for a strategy session. Margaret's desperate, Mike said, leaning forward. She offered to waive my violation fines if I'd testify you tampered with the ground near your fence. Sarah pulled a folder from her bag. I work at First Community Bank, where Margaret manages the HOA accounts. Yesterday, she withdrew $5,000 in cash from the community fund, claiming it was an emergency legal expense. When I asked for the second signature, she brushed it off. My mind raced. $5,000 in cash, right after the judge ordered a forensic analysis? She might be bribing someone, I speculated. Maybe the tech who faked that video. Later that night, my security feed caught Margaret meeting Vance in the community park, far from prying eyes. She gestured wildly, shoving an envelope into his hands. He glanced around nervously before pocketing it. The next morning, a certified letter from the court arrived. The forensic analysis confirmed Margaret's video was digitally manipulated. Her lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, and the matter was referred to the district attorney for potential charges. Relief washed over me, but a security alert interrupted my thoughts. Margaret's car was backing out of her driveway, a suitcase visible in the back seat. Moments later, a financial monitoring alert pinged. A $20,000 withdrawal from the HOA reserve fund, processed without dual signatures. I called Sarah, who confirmed Margaret had bypassed her at the bank. She knew I questioned it, Sarah said. I contacted Laura, who urged me to notify the police. This is embezzlement, and her fleeing suggests guilt. I accessed traffic cameras near the highway, spotting Margaret's blue sedan at a gas station 20 miles out of Maple Grove. I forwarded the location to Detective Paul Martinez, who assured me officers were en route. As I waited, I marveled at how a dispute over a fence had uncovered crimes that could land Margaret in prison. That evening, Martinez knocked on my door. "We got her," he said. "Caught her at a motel near the state line, checking in under a fake name. She had the cash, a burner phone, and documents for a false identity." Over the next hour, I walked him through the saga, from the first ladder incident to the falsified evidence. Martinez shook his head. "In 20 years, I've seen ugly neighborhood disputes, but this is next level." He requested copies of my evidence, noting the DEA was considering charges: trespassing, false police report, perjury, falsified evidence, and embezzlement. "She's facing serious time," he said, pausing at the door. "Why you, though? What made her fixate on you?" "I think I was a symbol of what she couldn't control," I replied. "My privacy, my fence, my absence from her meetings, all within the rules, but a challenge to her authority. For someone obsessed with control, that was unbearable." The next morning, I woke to police cruisers outside Margaret's house. Officers carried boxes of documents and electronics, executing a search warrant. Curious neighbors gathered, and I joined Helen on the sidewalk. "They've been at it an hour," she said. Sarah texted, "Margaret's been skimming from the HOA for years." Mike approached, handing out coffee. They found a filing cabinet in her community center office stuffed with residents' personal info, bank statements, credit reports, even medical records. She was collecting dirt on everyone. A chill ran through me. Margaret's invasion of privacy went beyond spying. She built a database of secrets for potential blackmail. By afternoon, news vans arrived, drawn by the scandal of an HOA president's fall. I declined interviews, but noticed Vance hurrying to his car, pursued by a reporter. His ashen face hinted at trouble. Later, I'd learned investigators found texts suggesting he knew about Margaret's evidence tampering. That evening, I sat on my back porch, the piece of my garden a balm after weeks of chaos. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emergency HOA meeting tomorrow. Interim leadership appointed. Some want you on the board." I smiled at the irony. Me, the recluse who dodged HOA involvement, now being asked to lead. Another text from Martinez. Hensley requested pen and paper in custody for an apology letter. "She was writing threats to you, Sarah, and Mike. She's on suicide watch and a psych hold." The news unsettled me. Despite her actions, I felt no joy in Margaret's unraveling. I thought of her staring at her mother's photo, her desperate need for control rooted in something tragic. An alert from my security system broke my reverie. An official county car parked outside. A woman from the DA's office, Karen Ellis, handed me an envelope. "We're preparing the case against Hensley and need a formal statement tomorrow. The DA thanks you. Your records make this case airtight." She paused. One question: did Hensley's actions show premeditation, or was she delusional about her authority? The question lingered as I spread the DA's documents on my kitchen table. Then, an email from Laura arrived. Subject: Urgent. New evidence. My heart raced as I read. Even after everything, Margaret had one final secret that would shake Maple Grove to its core. Laura's email was a bombshell. The police search of Margaret Hensley's home had uncovered a hidden safe tucked behind a false panel in her office. Inside were 15 years of HOA financial records, meticulously annotated in her handwriting. These weren't just sloppy receipts. They revealed a calculated scheme. Margaret had been embezzling from Maple Grove's community fund since she became HOA president, siphoning off nearly $150,000 through fake maintenance contracts, inflated invoices, and administrative fees funneled into her personal accounts. The records listed residents who'd paid expedited approval fees, bribes to overlook minor violations. Most chilling was a dossier on every homeowner in Maple Grove, detailing leverage points, financial struggles, marital issues, even private medical conditions. My name appeared on a separate list labeled Threats to Authority, alongside Sarah Miller, Mike Turner, and a few others who dared challenge her. Next to my entry were notes on failed tactics, violation notices, flyers, the lawsuit, culminating in a chilling plan. Legal action unsuccessful. Proceed to blackmail using bank records. The cold precision of her scheme showed a woman far more calculating than I'd imagined. The next morning, I drove to the district attorney's office to give my statement. The assistant DA, Robert Klein, listened intently as I recounted Margaret's campaign against me, from the latter incidents to the falsified evidence. When I finished, he shook my hand. Thanks to your evidence and these records, we're looking at multiple felony counts. Hensley's facing a long prison sentence. As I left, relief mingled with a strange sadness. Margaret's need for control had consumed her, twisting her life into something unrecognizable. 2 days later, Maple Grove's community center buzzed with tension as nearly every resident packed in for an emergency HOA meeting. The interim board, led by a retired judge named Edward Collins, laid out the financial devastation Margaret had wrought. An initial audit confirmed the $150,000 theft, with more discrepancies under review. Steps were announced: an independent audit, new financial oversight, and transparent violation processes. When I entered, conversations paused, but not with suspicion. Neighbors looked at me with respect. Several approached to apologize for believing Margaret's lies, others to thank me for standing firm. Sarah whispered as I sat beside her, "The board wants you as a tech advisor to secure digital systems." Interested, I chuckled at the irony. After years avoiding the HOA, I was being pulled into its heart. The meeting moved to open questions, and an elderly resident, Mr. Larson, admitted paying Margaret $800 to approve his gazebo. Edward assured him he was a victim, not an accomplice. As the meeting closed, Edward dropped a bombshell. Margaret Hensley has accepted a plea deal. She'll serve 8 to 12 years and must publicly apologize to the community, specifically to James Carver, Sarah Miller, and Mike Turner, next Saturday on the community green. A murmur of satisfaction rippled through the room. The apology would be a public reckoning, a moment to close this chapter. Over the next week, Maple Grove buzzed with preparations. Neighbors speculated about Margaret's state of mind, some pitying her, others furious. I focused on my garden, finding solace in its quiet order. The day of the apology dawned bright, the community green packed by 9:30 a.m. At 10 o'clock, a police cruiser pulled up, and Margaret emerged, flanked by officers. She was unrecognizable, no longer the imperious HOA queen. Her floral dress was wrinkled, her hair uncombed, her face streaked with smeared makeup. Her leg cast remained, but she refused help, hobbling to the podium. For a long moment, she stared at the crowd, her expression a mix of defiance and shame. When she spoke, her voice was a whisper. As part of my plea agreement, I apologized to the Maple Grove community for my actions as HOA president. The words were mechanical, devoid of remorse. When she addressed me, her tone hardened. I apologized to James Carver for my attempts to discredit him. The pause and careful phrasing screamed her reluctance to admit fault. As officers led her back to the cruiser, Sarah stepped forward. On behalf of a new HOA board, I promise transparency, fairness, and respect for every resident's rights. The crowd erupted in applause, a collective exhale after months of tension. As the cruiser drove off, neighbors began chatting, the green transforming into a space of connection. What had been a fractured neighborhood felt, for the first time, like a community. Over the next week, I threw myself into my new role as tech advisor. My first act was renaming the neighborhood Wi-Fi to HOA-free zone, a tongue-in-cheek nod that drew laughs. I also installed a sign by my garden, private area, no ladders allowed. It became a local hit, with neighbors snapping photos to share online. The board implemented new checks, dual signatures for withdrawals, open violation hearings, and encrypted digital systems I designed to prevent tampering. One Saturday, 6 weeks later, my doorbell rang. Helen stood there, holding a flyer for the neighborhood barbecue. "No hiding this time, James," she teased. "People expect the hero of Maple Grove." As she left, she handed me an envelope from a nearby development, requesting a consultation for their security system. I smiled, marveling at life's twists. I'd come to Maple Grove for solitude, yet here I was, woven into its fabric. At the barbecue, the community green buzzed with life. Kids played, grills sizzled, and neighbors mingled. Sarah waved me over to where she stood with Mike and Helen. To Maple Grove, she toasted, raising her glass. And to ladders in all the wrong places. The laughter felt like a release, a celebration of resilience. But as I sipped my drink, a question lingered. How had one woman's obsession spiraled so far? Margaret's downfall wasn't just about power. It was a warning about unchecked control and the damage it could inflict. I thought of her in her cell, writing those threatening notes, her mind unraveling under the weight of her choices. It was a tragedy, but one she'd authored herself. The barbecue marked a turning point for Maple Grove, but the scars of Margaret Hensley's reign lingered. As I mingled with neighbors, their stories poured out. Fines for trivial infractions, threats over minor aesthetic choices, and the constant fear of being watched. Yet, there was a new energy in the air, a determination to rebuild what had been broken. I found myself at the center of it, no longer the reclusive tech guy, but a figure of trust, someone who'd stood up to a tyrant and won. It was surreal, but I couldn't deny the warmth of belonging to something bigger than my garden. Over the next month, I dove into my role as the HOA's technology advisor with a focus that surprised even me. The board, now led by Edward Collins, prioritized transparency. We held open forums where residents could voice concerns, a stark contrast to Margaret's secretive rule. I overhauled the neighborhood's digital infrastructure, encrypting financial records and installing tamper-proof cameras. The HOA-free zone, Wi-Fi name stuck, a running joke that reminded everyone of our hard-won freedom. My "No Ladders Allowed" sign became a minor legend, with a local newspaper running a tongue-in-cheek story about Maple Grove's Great Ladder Rebellion. But not everything was smooth. Some neighbors remained wary, conditioned by Margaret's propaganda to suspect hidden agendas. At one meeting, a retiree named Carl Jenkins questioned the board's spending, hinting I might be another tech wizard pulling strings. I invited him to review the budget himself, showing him the open-access financial portal I'd built. His skepticism softened, and he later apologized, admitting Margaret's lies had left him paranoid. It was a small victory, but it underscored the challenge of rebuilding trust. Sarah Miller emerged as a key ally, her quiet strength anchoring the board. She pushed for a hardship fund to help residents like herself, single parents or those on fixed incomes, cover unexpected fines or repairs. When she shared her story of juggling 2 jobs while facing Margaret's $300 hedge fine, the room fell silent. "We're not just fixing rules," she said. "We're making sure no one feels crushed by them." The fund passed unanimously, funded partly by recovered assets from Margaret's embezzlement. Mike Turner, meanwhile, took on a maintenance oversight role, ensuring no worker faced the exploitation he'd endured. He shared how Margaret had forced him to repaint her porch for free, threatening his job if he refused. She treated us like pawns, he said at a meeting. Now we're playing for the community. His candor won over skeptics, and his coffee runs during board sessions became a ritual, lightening the mood. The legal fallout from Margaret's actions continued to unfold. The district attorney's office recovered $120,000 of the stolen $150,000, with the rest traced to offshore accounts that might never be retrieved. Margaret's plea deal included restitution, but her personal assets were meager. Her house, heavily mortgaged, was sold to cover legal fees. Her attorney, Richard Vance, faced his own reckoning. Text messages showed he'd known about the falsified video, and he was disbarred for ethical violations. The DA considered charges, but Vance settled for community service, a humiliating fall for a man who'd once strutted through Maple Grove like a peacock. Margaret's public apology lingered in my mind, not for its sincerity. There was none, but for what it revealed. Her mechanical delivery and hardened tone when mentioning me showed a woman unbowed, even in defeat. Detective Martinez later shared that her apology letter in custody had been a series of threats targeting me, Sarah, and Mike. Her placement on suicide watch and a psychiatric hold suggested a deeper unraveling. I thought of her staring at her mother's photo, her life defined by a need to control that had consumed everything. It was a tragedy, but one she'd chosen. One crisp October morning, I received a call from the neighboring Pinewood Estates, the community that had sent the consultation letter. They wanted a security system like Maple Grove's, one that balanced safety with privacy. I agreed to meet, realizing my clash with Margaret had turned me into an accidental expert. The consultation led to a contract, and soon I was designing systems for 2 other developments. My quiet career in smart home tech was evolving into something public, a legacy born from a backyard feud. Back in Maple Grove, the first annual Ladder-Free Festival was proposed, a half-serious community event to celebrate our renewal. Helen Baxter, ever the instigator, suggested a ladder-shaped piñata stuffed with candy shaped like HOA violation notices. The idea caught fire, and by spring, the festival became reality, drawing families from nearby towns. I gave a short speech, deflecting the hero label to Sarah, Mike, and the residents who'd spoken out. Margaret thought control was power, I said, but real strength is standing together. As winter settled in, I sat on my back porch, the garden dormant but promising renewal. My phone buzzed with an email from Laura Peterson, updating me on Margaret's case. She'd been transferred to a medium security facility, her appeals exhausted. A handwritten note found in her cell referenced her mother, a final clue to the obsession that had driven her. I set the phone down, gazing at the stars. Maple Grove wasn't perfect, petty disputes still flared, and not everyone embraced the new openness. But it was home, flaws and all. The following summer, I hosted a small barbecue in my yard, opening my fence for the first time. Helen, Sarah, Mike, and a dozen others came, marveling at the tomatoes I'd once guarded so fiercely. We laughed about the ladder saga, now a neighborhood legend. You know, Sarah said, if Margaret hadn't climbed that ladder, we might still be under her thumb. It was a sobering thought. One woman's tyranny had forced us to confront what community meant, forging bonds stronger than her threats. Reflecting on it all, I realized the fight wasn't just about a fence or a garden. It was about standing up to injustice, no matter how small it seemed. Margaret's downfall showed that power built on fear and control is fragile, crumbling when challenged with truth. Maple Grove had learned that lesson, and so had I. As I locked my gate that night, I felt a quiet pride, not in winning, but in choosing to fight. What do you think of Maple Grove's story? Have you ever faced a bully like Margaret, whether in an HOA, workplace, or elsewhere? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on how we confront tyranny and injustice in our lives. Do you believe standing your ground, like James did, is always the answer, or are there times when walking away is wiser? Let's hear your perspective. This conversation matters.